So I wanted to ask, so we'll take time for questions. I'll get to ask the first question. So what's cataloging for males? Jill, what's cataloging for males?
I don't know. We'd have to ask. We'd have to ask Lisa McLean from the Commons.
All right. Questions for our panelists. Bert Corelli, Stanford, Highwire, troublemaker.
I'm curious if any of these web discovery systems are tied into fulfillment by document delivery anymore, any of the document delivery services?
Do you need us to repeat questions?
So the question was, are any of these systems tied into document delivery, and how do they work with document delivery? Libraries are just beginning to experiment, I think, with that. And one thing I didn't show from Boston University in particular, they are using another tool of Ex Libris's called BX Recommender, where if you pull up a journal article, it'll say, since you pulled up this one, you might also like these other 10. And sometimes the library doesn't have those, and there is a mechanism in place in which you would be able to then link out and buy that article, or the library could potentially buy the article on your behalf. But I really think libraries are just starting to move into that arena. I know of a couple that have been doing that for some time. Trinity University in San Antonio is one of them that's been doing it a lot with Elsevier content. Where instead of buying buying subscriptions, they just load all the Elsevier content and they pay for article delivery of those titles. So they would appear like regular access, like the library has it, and the patron wouldn't even realize that they were kind of charging or buying an article.
And I'm interested to get the panel's view on whether that would be workable or desirable, whether there would be problems with that from other perspectives, because it seems such an obvious, why aren't we doing that?
Who first?
I was going to say.
I don't see a problem at all with that, especially if it's done at the point of article submission. It's a lot harder for us to try to do it kind of after the fact. So then we're going to have these two tiers then of content, of the content that came before ORCID and the content that came after. And I just don't know how we go back and assign ORCIDs to researchers and scholarship where the people are no longer with us. And because since we have, especially in libraries, such a longevity of content that we're trying to offer and make available. So that would be the concern there, is how we could do that in a really relevant mass way. Maybe it's something we could crowdsource, who knows? But that would be really exciting and kind of interesting to try.
Darcy?
Right. I would just add, too, that ORCID is really for tomorrow. So today, I mean, you should start, including ORCID if you can, but then also try to collect a lot of data as it is anyway. The more signals, the more data, the more means of providing some additional information, the better, just overall. And that's, what Jill was saying about previous content. You're still having to carry that legacy through. And until ORCID has such a critical mass, and it's much, much farther down the road, is it really going to be able to provide a super strong signal to a discovery service or a system that's built?
I think we can take it as a signal among other signals, so it'll be a disambiguator for quite some time until there's a real critical mass of adoption. I think that in current research, the critical mass will get reached in probably 2 years, 3 years maybe, but there's a whole legacy. So think of it as a signal rather than an identifier everything will have. Jay, did you have any more to say on?
No,
Okay.
leave that one alone.
All right. Another question?
I'm Steve Bowman with Grill, and the message is coming through loud and clear in this section about the importance of metadata and improving the metadata use of mine. But my question is whether we should also be providing full text content to discovery services, if that would also enhance discoverability.
So the question is, should we publishers be providing full text content to discovery services? Will that enhance? Who wants to take that?
I'll take that, yes. And do not discriminate. Do not put it in a silo of just one provider and not the other ones, please. Because we have a lot of proprietary content battles going on right now in the discovery realm. And that really limits what our end users can discover via the library channels because of that. And I'm not really sure that that's the place in the market where the lines should be drawn on how you capitalize the content. Ultimately, I think what it does is you shut off a lot of valves when you're only providing your content to one provider and not to multiple providers.
Yeah, I'd endorse what Jill just said, and also say that, as I had said, don't be afraid to explore working with partners to help you with data, not just the creation or structuring of data or finding the right identifiers to describe your data properly, but also to help you syndicate that data so that you are treating every target equally, that your data starts with you as the parent of the work, and then is normalized through syndication so that you then spread that data to as many services in exactly the same form as you can.
So
populate as many channels as possible.
I'll just, not to disagree, but just think about when is it appropriate to work with, say, abstract level only. And there are some times, for instance, at Highwire we've been doing semantic tagging now for about 15 years, and surprisingly, the semantic tagging quality improves if you limit the process to abstracts. Why would that be? Well, if what you're trying to do is tag the work as a whole for its meaning, its fields, and so on, that's accurately summarized in the abstract. When you include all the full text, it's like adding a lot of noise into a signal. And so you can sometimes get very significant stray tagging. But that's, again, that's a very specific use case for tagging. In general, we know from interviews we've done with researchers on the Stanford campus that they're often looking for things that are not found that are not the main intent of the work. They're looking for a method. They want to see examples of use of a method. Well, that's typically not going to be covered in the abstract of a work. So full text is really worthwhile. Question in front?
Nancy Blair de Leon with IEEE. So I have a question. I've seen in a lot of the discovery services, our content is available in all of them, that they tend to have a lot of duplicate records, right? Or that there just seems to be so much metadata or so much content that I think somewhere in there there's value that's being lost in the scholarly content. I've also seen instances where one, for example, creates a hybrid record, right? So what they say they do is that they take the data from all of the sources. So that might be the IEEE metadata, maybe Thompson, maybe Scopus, and create this record. But I've seen instances where the abstract is missing in this hybrid record, right? But the reality is the abstract is available on all those sources. So I almost feel like we're sort of making a mess of the data as well. Does anybody feel that way?
Well, I can just jump in and say that's actually the point of the unique identifying and applying a standard identifier to discrete deliverables of content. What happens with that out in the supply chain is something you aren't necessarily able to control.
Right.
And that's just it, if there are some systems.
You could put all the controls in there, right, that you want, but at the end of the day, if it's still just being thrown in this big pot, I'm not sure, I feel like we're losing value in there somewhere.
Well, I don't think providing less data would simplify or correct that problem.
No, I know.
And so I'm not sure how to overcome it.
So,
I guess the question is the same data from so many different sources, is that necessary? Or could that be clogging up or putting a roadblock on the discovery? Maybe that's the question I'm asking.
I don't have any experience with it personally. I don't see that the clogging. I mean, there's the old cliche I often use that the confused mind always says no, and that's what you're really saying here. Is that too much data? Maybe multiple descriptions of the same thing are presented to a user. They don't know what to click. They tune out. There could definitely be some of that going on, but again, there's no good alternative. Those systems that are not displaying your data well, if you're providing them with the tools to do it, which has got to come in the form of very unique descriptions, identifiers of content, then it's really on them to create a better product. And so I guess that's would be my contribution.
Yeah, and I would say that happens a lot with libraries where we've taken discovery layers and we've just put them on top of the traditional or older integrated library systems. Because in many cases, we put in as many records as possible in the old integrated library system because that was the best way to do discovery and I'm going to say it, in the 20th century, and we're just now making the transition to the 21st century. And we're just starting to try to work on that deduplication. And with the next gen system, it is much cleaner, and it does work and parse so much better and looks so much better as far as the different access points. Unfortunately, in library land, given our financial situation, system support and what we can contribute and put to that continues to be reduced. So we'll just have to wait and see how soon it'll be before the older systems get rolled into the newer systems. I think we're on the right path, but we're not fully there yet.
Andrew?
I'm Andrew Harmon, and I work for what could be called the Journal of Big Cosmos. Thank you, Darcy. I was curious, how are you responding to these calls for more, not just content and metadata about content, but data itself? I mean, we've been hearing a lot in here about creating, well, first of all, ever-widening arrays of formats for data and more data and data being identified uniquely even from, or at least in relation to the content. How are libraries and search engines, what are we going to expect in the future as we start making more of this data available and put out there, whether from us or from the repositories that we partner with?
Well, I would say for the top end and really good discovery systems, it's discoverable. It's especially discoverable if it's been, if the right identifiers have been used and if the right citation set has been applied. It's not a problem. It tends to be more of a problem in those cases where we're trying to mold together an older system and these outlying repository information with one discovery layer. And some of the discovery layers are definitely better than others at parsing down to a data set or to an illustration or to a photograph and to those more discrete elements. And so it's contingent upon libraries to really understand their patron base and their audience and which tool works best for them in the encompassing in the entire environment, as opposed to just the bibliographic universe that we're used to working it and managing.
I'm Mary Rose Music from JSTOR, and I was struck by when Darcy was talking about doing as much as you can in your references and not using journal acronyms or journal abbreviations, and thinking back on 25 plus years and the number of style guides that I worked with early in my career, and Index Medicus journal abbreviations and Math Reviews journal abbreviations and all this. Other than talking to us, publishers in the room here, some of which might also have had sort of a visceral reaction to, well, we use Chicago, and that's what we use for our reference style. How does an organization like Scholar or any organization try more evangelistically, perhaps, to get the word out that maybe you need to let go of that style guide you've been married to for 50 years because all you were doing was print?
Can you guys help us with that?
I was going to say.
Well, it's funny because it's truly something that these guides are, there was a purpose for them in print. There are, there's a purpose for them not in print, but they need to evolve as online content has evolved. And we've been trying to talk with the APA and Chicago Manual, and, coming from us, they're kind of like, really, come on.
Yeah,
Google
we're the
trying to
Chicago
change-
style guide. Who are you, Google?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what the hell do you think you're doing? We already have enough issues with you as it is, or whatever it is. I don't know. But so if you guys, as publishers, though, this is critical to your discoverability and to being able to collect more data, then if it's something that is of a similar concern, then it would be awesome if you guys could help lobby for potential changes just to the online formats, really. It doesn't necessarily have to change the whole thing, but just the way that, possibly some of these data are made available to search and discovery systems.
Yeah, it's parsed out into unique fields and everything's properly identified. All kinds of cool things can happen. You can come back to your style guides. But what the publisher's producing should be raw, well-structured, tagged-up data. I always think about how, like eBrary's platform, their info tools, the ability when you take a citation, you copy a piece of text and you drop it into your research paper and it brings the citation over for you. But ahead of time, you set what citation style you want. Oh, I want MLA or whatever. Chicago style. It'll drop it in structured. What's the metadata and the highly structured data on the back end that's making that possible?
Right. We have something similar in the search results for Scholar now where you can click on a cite button in search results. It's fairly new, so you may or may not have been able to see it, but it'll show you different formats. I think we have 3 at the moment. APA, MLA, Chicago, I think.
That sounds right.
I should know this. But you would be able to, basically what it's doing is it's trying to construct that format based on the data that's in the indexing system. But I think the more data that you have, the better. Really, it doesn't matter how bad it is or how good. Hopefully, the systems that are trying to understand it will be able to have more to go on. So I was just thinking when you were, talking about having potentially multiple sources, that's actually a good problem to have. We love stuff like that.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the panelists, and I also appreciate the audience.
Thank you, everybody.